With that, I'm going to turn over the reins to Sheila and Liz. And as you just heard, this webinar is being recorded. Forgot to do that in the beginning. And we will be offering this on our YouTube channel at Anjac Views for all of those who weren't able to make it tonight, or for those of you who wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I heard this really great thing on that Anjac webinar and I can't remember what it is. So you just have to go to YouTube at 3 o'clock in the morning and see what it's about. So it'll be there for you to view at your leisure later. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz and Sheila and our amazing speakers, Michelle and Nancy, for this evening, and offer them a profound thanks for being with us this year and being fantastic partners all year round. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jen. Thank you, everybody. And again, welcome this evening to the last of our 2022 Environmental Commission Roundtables. We started this in 2022. And it looks like it's been pretty popular. So our plan is to continue these in 2023. Every other month, we will offer a topic. And if you ever think of a topic you'd like us to consider for this roundtable format, please send an email to info@anjac.org. I'm delighted tonight that, as Jen mentioned, that we're going to have a talk about sustainable landscaping. And our first speaker is Michelle Backus. She's an associate professor and county agent at Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Middlesex and Union counties. And also joining her, speaking a little after Michelle, is Nancy Adams. She's Maplewood Township Committee woman. And what we would like to ask you to do is to put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them, and then we will read them at the end to the speakers so we can have a chance, and then we'll be able to share with everybody so you can hear. So thank you, Michelle, if you would like to take the reins over. Thank you.
Sure, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll do that mute thing. All right, can you hear me?
We can indeed. Thank you.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. Good to be here this evening, and I wanted to thank Anjac for inviting me. I feel seen by Jen Coffey. How did she know that I'm up at 3 a.m. searching YouTube for things to help me go back to sleep? So I'm going to be talking to you today about sustainable landscaping, some of the basic tenets of sustainable landscaping. I pulled from a lot of different presentations for tonight because we teach and we do programming in different aspects of sustainable landscaping. So if it seems a little scattered, that is why. So just really quickly, if you don't know Rutgers Cooperative Extension, we are the outreach arm of the university. We are part of the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. Okay, so that means that we do get state funding, and the line item in our budget, says New Jersey Ag Experiment Station. And we're a collaboration between the counties that we serve in the university. So every county in the state has a Rutgers Cooperative Extension office. Even Hudson County now has a cooperative extension office, so you don't have to reach out to someone on campus to get your questions answered. You can go directly to your local county extension office. That's our website there. Lots of great resources and different programming that you can explore. One of our programs, you may be familiar with our Master Gardener program or our 4-H program or some of the other work that we do, but we also have the Rutgers Environmental Stewards program. And I saw, when I was looking at the folks who are here tonight, I saw a bunch of our environmental stewards. Hello to all of you guys, good to see you. And know that registration is open for that program now. And so you are welcome to join us in 2023. You might have somebody on your environmental commission who is an environmental steward. Feel free to ask them about that program. You can check out our website at envirostewards.rutgers.edu. It's kind of a crash course in environmental protection in New Jersey. It's about 4 months long, and then there's an internship portion. Okay, so I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to dive right into our content here. When I typically do this talk for different audiences, one of the things that I ask first is what do typically our audiences or the public expect from their human-made landscapes? So our corporate landscapes, our school landscapes, our own landscapes, our home landscapes. what do we expect? And the answers that we typically get are things like, well, we want them to be safe. We want them to be aesthetically pleasing. We want them to have curb appeal. We want them to be easy to maintain. So they're functional kind of spaces. But rarely does someone say, well, we want them to have ecosystem services. But that's what we're talking about this evening. We are being asked in many different ways now because of all of the environmental issues that we're trying to address, for the landscapes that we manage, that humans manage, to take on providing ecosystem services. So what do I mean by that? I mean, can our landscapes that we manage, can they help deal with climate change? Can they help with species loss? I'll talk about that a little bit later. There is this worldwide biodiversity crisis that we're in. Can we manage our landscapes to help with that? What about water and air pollution? Can we manage our landscapes to improve water quality, to reduce stormwater runoff, to conserve water? How about you hear a lot about pollinators, pollinator conservation. Can we manage our human-made landscapes to help with that issue? And then there's also issues with forest health and invasive species. So this is what, when we talk about sustainable landscaping, this is what we're asking of these landscapes, that we create landscapes that are sustainable and can help with these different issues. And if this is something that you are thinking about this winter, as Jen said, you do not have to start from scratch. There is so much out there to help you and your townships on a personal level, on a township level, on a school level, wherever you're coming to this from. There's just a tremendous amount of resources. This is a great time to be doing this because there's just such a tremendous amount that's out there. When I started out in this field, there wasn't a lot. There was not a lot, but now there's templates and there's lists and there's how-tos, and we have in New Jersey some fantastic programs. So there's the River Friendly program, which is in different parts of New Jersey. It's with the Watershed Institute, the Rahway River Watershed Association, Upper Raritan Headwaters Association. You can look to them for assistance with your sustainable landscaping goals. Jersey Friendly Yards is a fantastic website and resource, a great plants database. There's national programs like Doug Talmy, if you're familiar with Doug Talmy and the work that he's doing at the University of Delaware, and Mount Cuba Center, the work that they're doing, trying to integrate more native plants into our home landscapes with the National Wildlife Federation. That's a wonderful program. And then we have Jersey Sustainable Schools. We have ANJAC, we have Eco Schools. So there's so much out there already. And I would definitely encourage you to kind of like steal from these programs and give them credit, of course, but a lot of the work has been done and the resources are done. It's not just Rutgers Cooperative Extension doing this work. So look at what resources are out there and then start adapting those resources. Also the state, with some of the programs that they've put forth in the last the last couple of decades, is moving us towards sustainability. The New Jersey Fertilizer Law in 2011, the updated stormwater rules that now green infrastructure is mandated. We have the New Jersey Native Plants Program. So we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we're kind of being moved in that general direction of sustainability. At Rutgers, so one of the programs that we have is the Organic Land Care Program, and that's for landscapers who are looking to transition to organic management in their land care practices. That there is a website for this, and there's also a best management practices manual that you can download. It is free. You just do a search for Rutgers Organic Land Care, and it's free on our website. And a lot of the concepts that I'm talking to you about today are laid out more fully in this particular manual. So sustainable landscaping is kind of this umbrella term. There's lots of different, you hear a lot of different terms: environmentally friendly landscaping, climate resilient gardening, low maintenance landscaping, nature-based solutions. Extension has historically taught integrated pest management. So the definition that I'm going to give you comes from our Organic Land Care Program. and I'm taking pieces from our organic land care program when I'm talking to you tonight. But organic land care is a holistic approach to landscaping that improves the natural resources of a site by fostering cycling of resources, promoting ecological balance, and conserving biodiversity. And those last three terms come actually directly from the National Organic Program Standards, the NOP, which are federal standards for agriculture that have been adapted. This definition was adapted to land care and to landscaping. So we're talking about ecology now, right? And ecology is the study of the living environment and its relationship with the non-living world. When you landscape sustainably, what you should be doing is looking to protect the ecological cycles in place on the property, and then make sure that that property is not negatively impacting surrounding land uses. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some basic concepts for sustainable landscaping practices. And when you search this on the internet, there's a lot that comes up. For the most part, they're giving you kind of laundry lists or steps or basic practices that should be that should be goals in the landscape, and you can work towards. I don't want to overwhelm anyone. None of this needs to be done tomorrow, but these are basic goals, foundation concepts that should be part of every sustainable landscaping program. And you can pull from this things that are more easily achievable, or things that you want to promote in your township. So we'll go through these basic practices. They're adapted from the soil profile newsletter, which was put out by Joe Heckman, our soil specialist at Rutgers, and then also the NOFA organic land care standards. Okay, so the first one is do no harm by protecting the natural elements of a site. So typically, if we're training landscapers, what we're saying to them is that when you first go on a site, the first thing that you want to do is a site assessment. You know, what is on the site? What are the light conditions? What are the microclimates? What is the soil that you have on site? How is the water flowing? What are the drainage patterns? And what is the current land use? Okay, and then you're leaving established ecosystems intact. For example, if there's a forest tract on the property, or a wetland. Maybe not. Maybe you have a small quarter-acre lot, and there you're just going to be promoting beneficial habitat. I mean, you're going to be incorporating native plants. Where do you have exotic plants or invasive plants that you maybe want to move out over time? And then obviously you want to obey laws regarding wetlands and riparian busters. So basically you're walking the property, looking at making a plan for the property and doing a site assessment of that property. Another basic tenet of sustainable landscaping is to reduce energy, water, and material inputs. A sustainable landscape is a landscape that should have minimal outside inputs in order to thrive. And I'm not just talking about chemical use on the property. I'm talking about things like minimizing the use of fossil fuels, fossil fuel powered equipment, right? You're going to be hearing a little bit later about the gas powered leaf blower ordinances. So moving towards a place where you're using less energy on that property to maintain it, avoiding idling of vehicles, landscaping to reduce the energy use of the home. When this is done well, it's incredibly effective. So putting in place landscaping on a property where you have windbreaks, or maybe you have vegetation that's cooling the house in the summer, but then allows in the winter, the summer sun to come in and warm the home. So thinking about landscaping that way, how can it help with the energy use of the home? And then also using locally produced materials and plants. Okay, how much can we locally source material? Locally sourced mulch, locally sourced plant material, locally sourced landscaping, any sort of landscaping product. And then also obviously reducing irrigation use on the property. Also treating the landscape as a whole living system. This is very important. The understanding that the soil and the plants have a relationship, determining underlying problems that are causing pests, diseases, and weeds. So not immediately calling out an air raid when there is a pest issue or a disease issue. Instead, figuring out what is the root of the problem. Maybe there's issues with weeds because there's compaction, the soil is compacted. Maybe the soil is too acidic, and that's why you have certain weeds, or that's why you're getting certain pests. Maybe there's fungal diseases because of overwatering, or maybe there's a nutrient deficiency. So maybe, you have a red thread issue and there's just some nitrogen that needs to be added to the turf. So that's what I mean by treating the landscape a whole living system, not just kind of looking at the problem and grabbing a chemical to try to deal with it. Practicing the law of return, so returning grass clippings and leaf debris or composting them. And then also encouraging biodiversity and avoiding monocultures. This is critically important. You've probably heard about the research that has gone on. Obviously, insects form the basics of our food web. And maybe some of you have heard about the research that was done looking at, for example, caterpillars, and that you need between 5,000 and 9,000 caterpillars just to raise a healthy brood of chickadees. So encouraging biodiversity on the property, using different species of plants, preferably native plants, and avoiding monocultures. Monoculture is a community of just one plant. And I'm not just talking about our gardens, I'm also talking about the turf grass on the property. So using a variety of different turf grass species, not just one species, maybe low maintenance turf grass varieties like tall, hard, and chewing fescues. And Rutgers has some really good fact sheets on choosing low maintenance turf grass varieties. And then IDing places on the property where you can have low mow zones. Maybe there's an area that can be native grasses and a small meadow or a pocket meadow. Someone once I read somewhere that if the only time you see a certain area of your property is when you're mowing it, you have to really think about whether or not that has to be lawn, that has to be turf. Could you be transitioning a portion of the property over into habitat? So maybe making a plan this winter for that. Where am I going to transition a portion of this property over to more ecologically friendly habitat? The use of green mulches, for example. So is there places that I can remove turf and start integrating ground covers, native ground covers, or low maintenance perennial beds, so herbaceous plants, shrubs, and woodlots. So there's lots and lots of resources online for this. It's really pretty spectacular what's available for free. This is just one. This is a great resource that came out, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, native plants for the small yard. I realize that not everybody, lives on an acre of land. Maybe you're in an apartment, maybe you're in an apartment, maybe you just have a little patio deck, maybe you have a tiny lot, and you just have a small area that you can turn over that maybe to create some habitat. So this is a nice publication that's specifically for small yards. They have some wonderful templates for example, a mailbox garden or a downspout garden, or maybe for the front porch or what they call the hell strip or the sidewalk strip. There are some great templates with some beautiful suggestions about how you can transition that into habitat. And then, of course, it is winter, right? We're coming into winter. We're at the tail end of fall, and we're hearing a lot about leaving the leaves and creating winter habitat or winter pollinator gardens. Why are we hearing so much about this now? There's a very important reason why. These are some pictures here from the Xerces Society, their campaign, the Leave the Leaf campaigns. Critically important now because you've probably seen the headlines, right? We have a we have an insect apocalypse going on in the, worldwide insect apocalypse. A lot of the data is coming out of Europe. Germany has lost something like 70% of its insects. So the United States is on track. We have something like 3 of our native bees that are threatened. So a lot of that is because of habitat loss. There's lots of other reasons, pesticides, agriculture, things like that. But one basic thing that we can do is preserve winter habitat. We have a tendency to focus on these species that migrate. So, for example, there's a lot of interest in the monarch butterflies, which is very, very important to preserve habitat for monarch butterflies. But monarch butterflies migrate in the winter. Most of our insects don't. They stay with us. They stay locally and they overwinter in our leaves, in our twigs, in the stems of leaves. So this was really a brilliant campaign, I thought, that Xerces Society has, and this would be great ones to these. It's right on their website. You can forward them on. Really nicely explaining to the public why it's so important to leave the leaves and leave twigs, leave winter habitat. So there's lots of ways to have winter habitat, right? And winter habitat can be very beautiful. It does not have to be. It's fine if it is messy, messy is good. Messy means that there's habitat, but then this is a time to think about, look around at winter spaces, look at things that you like. So this is winterberry holly here that has beautiful red berries that stay persistent on the stem in the winter. Red osier dogwood also has some beautiful red stems. What's more beautiful than dogwood in the winter against the snow? Native grasses are great for winter interest. And then things like interesting barks that look great in the winter. So for example, river birch, leaving spaces, twigs, piles on the ground for overwintering insects. And don't worry about the leaves. Don't worry about leaving the leaves. The vegetation is going to come through, in the spring. Like you see on the bottom here, this is Pachyra aurea, a golden ragwort that's peeking through the leaves. It does just fine, just like on a forest floor. The vegetation will come through. Okay, some other sustainable practices, fertilizing with naturally occurring materials to supply essential nutrients as indicated by a soil test. Okay, so using ingredients like natural plant or animal byproducts, fish blood, feather, bone meal, things like that. And then making sure to get your soil tested. This is a basic tenet of sustainable landscaping. Don't use anything on the property that does not that you don't have to, and you should have a soil test showing that you need the nutrients that you are putting down. Of course, promoting soil health, applying fertilizer based on the soil test, increasing organic matter through the use of compost, correcting soil pH to maximize nutrient uptake. Very, very important. Plants take up nutrients in this happy zone of like between 6.5, around 6.5 pH. Okay, so making sure you have a soil test every 3 years so you know what the pH is of your soil. And so you're using compost to encourage those beneficial soil organisms, especially if you're going to be using maybe more organic fertilizers. You need that soil biology in your soil to help transition the nutrients over so that it can be taken up by plants. Very important. And then cultural practices. Maybe you've heard this term before. Cultural practices are critical. Choosing cultural practices. So preemptively using prophylactively using cultural practices so that you don't have to reach for a chemical later for managing pests, diseases, and weeds. These are critical, and good landscapers that do this well are dependent upon their cultural practices. What do I mean by that? Concepts like right plant, right place. Don't put a plant that likes to have moist soil in a place where it's going to be dry most of the time. Proper genetics, okay, looking at, for example, those low maintenance turf grass varieties that are appropriate for your site. Even mowing height, like you see in this picture here, making sure to mow the turf between 2 to 3 inches to help establish deep roots, right? is a more sustainable practice and will lead to a healthier lawn. Keeping your mower blades sharp. These are basic things. Sharp mower blades make clean cuts on the turf so that diseases can't make their way into the turf. Overseeding, aerating, and top dressing in the fall. The fall is the time to be thinking about lawn care practices, and fall is a great time to be planting. And then identifying root problems such as compaction and pH issues. Okay, so cooperative extension, we do a lot of programming and assistance in this area. We train landscapers. We have a lot of recorded webinars on this topic. We do live workshops and presentations for environmental commissions. And then we have our extension volunteer programs that you probably already know about. Take a look at the Earth Day Every Day website, which has recorded webinars on native plants, invasive species, environmentally friendly lawn care, backyard composting. This is the Organic Land Care website, and there is an area for homeowners and as well as a Find a Landscaper link where you can look for landscapers that have gone through the program. And I did just very quickly as I end here want to let you know that some of our other programs we have in Middlesex County where I work started a Native Plants for Biodiversity project with our volunteers. So we're growing native herbaceous perennials. At our extension office, this is our nursery with the goal of we donate native plants to community projects. So pollinator gardens, school gardens, municipal libraries, churches, things like that. If you're creating a habitat, you can apply to us and we can donate plants to your projects. This was another project that we did, an eco-friendly yards project in Manalapan, Monroe, Jamesburg, Spotswood, and Henletta. This was a nice thing over COVID. We were able to give out eco-friendly yard kits, native plants and soil test kits. Residents watched an hour presentation on sustainable practices, similar to what you're hearing now, everything from rain barrels, rain gardens, green infrastructure, native plants. And then once they watched that recorded webinar, it qualified them for an eco-friendly yard kit, which was native plants and a soil test kit. And that was a really fun project to work on, and where I'm happy to talk to other townships about working with them on that. Okay, so that's the end of my talk. I think I may have gone over. Sorry about that. And here is my contact information. And I don't know if we're saving questions for later.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That's wonderful. A lot of information. And yeah, what I think we're going to do is after Nancy speaks for a few minutes, we will then have questions from the group, so of both of you. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. Sheila, we're going to introduce Nancy, please.
Yes, that was
Hi,
great.
Nancy.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm just dropping into the chat the link for the Rutgers Environmental Stewards Program so that the attendees have access to that. And next up, we have Nancy Adams, who is the Township Committee woman from Maplewood, where I just moved from 24 years, and it's been wonderful watching all the great work that she's done there. And so she's going to speak to us about the leaf blower ban that we had in Maplewood, and from the beginning when it was a pilot program, all the way through. It's had a more than one version, and so she's going to share with us her history of that, and that's basically it. And Michelle, if you don't mind, if you could unshare your screen.
Oh,
and
yes.
But Nancy, so if you could share with everybody the great experience that we had in Maplewood.
Well, we miss you. We miss you, Sheila.
Right, I miss
you on my monthly environmental advisory committee meetings. So yeah, no, so thank you for that. Sheila, you were such a great resource to have here and to be on our environmental advisory committee, and knowing the inner workings of environmental commissions across the state. So yeah, as Sheila said, we passed a gas-powered leaf blower ban in our community. I'll just give you a little rundown on the history of that so people can kind of understand how it evolved. In 2016, actually like a month into my first term in office, and excuse my dog tap dancing around the floor here, we had a resident come and mention, the disturbance that she found from the noise. And I had been an at-home mom for a long time and then went out into the workforce. And in 2013, I was started working from home. And I had been experiencing the same thing, that wasn't a thing prior to that. So it was kind of bizarre that I couldn't hear, on a phone call or that kind of thing that we've all kind of experienced from the noise. So it all started from a noise perspective. So that summer we did a pilot program. So we disallowed the use of gas-powered leaf blowers by landscaping companies for June, July, and August of that summer. And then we formed sort of a subcommittee of people pro and con against the restriction, and kind of did interviews with landscaping companies, and kind of for several months looked into some of the research about it. We even did our own little science experiments with particulate matter. I had little cups, petri dishes with Vaseline in them to see how much particulate matter got collected in them. So we did a lot in that regard on that first year. And then as a result of that subcommittee's work, I reported back to my fellow township committee members about the findings. And of course, this was all discussed at public meetings. We had a couple hours of public comment each time we brought this up, both pro and con, obviously. And in 2017, we passed an annual restriction. So we passed an ordinance in 2017 that restricted the use at all during middle of May to the end of September, and then some restrictions on the use of them in the other seasons where they were permitted. In other words, never on Sundays, starting later in the day on Saturdays. A lot of that had to do with quality of life for people. Maplewood's a 4.5 or 4 square mile town with 25,000 plus residents. So we're pretty densely populated here. And gas-powered leaf blowers, for those who aren't as aware of them as I am, operate on a 2-stroke engine. The decibel, or the decibel level, is the frequency that it runs on is very low, so it travels farther than other pieces of equipment might, and it penetrates doors, windows, and walls. So you can't necessarily close all those things, close your doors and windows and not hear it. It just doesn't. I think most people understand that that's not what happens. So we restricted their use when they were actually permitted. Then the following year, I think it was the following year in 2018, we restricted them a little further. So it was May 1st through September 30th. So basically there was no use of them. And then I had a newer resident, a young mom, reach out to me. She had moved to the suburbs, and was appalled at that she couldn't let her preschool age kids out in the yard so frequently, because of not just the noise, but what was being blown, the particulate matter and the fumes and all the things that are a result of the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. And we have a restriction at our township committee meetings that the governing body, you can hear public comment, but we restrict people to 3 minutes per person. So I suggested there was a vacancy on our environmental advisory committee. I suggested she join that, because she obviously had environmental desires and concerns. So she did, and then the environmental advisory committee did a presentation to the full governing body for 20 minutes to a half hour. And that's useful just because, it might help somebody in figuring out how to kind of go about getting this information to the public and to the governing body, who ultimately makes the decision of whether or not to restrict the use of these polluting machines. And she did that, and we had a unanimous vote of the members of the township committee to completely ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers beginning January 1, 2023 in the township. And, one of the comments that we heard was, which I mean, I wanted to do it from the beginning, but I think was compelling to others, was that if all the reasons that we stated for restricting the use of these during the summer months or during the spring and summer and into the fall were environmental, of course, health related. It's basically, to me, it's the health of the environment, the health of the people who live in our town, our residents, especially the youngest and the oldest among us, the health of the workers who put them on their back and breathe that stuff in all day long, not to mention the damage to their hearing, but the health, just so basically the health of the insects that Michelle was just talking about, the health of the landscape, which you were also talking about. Stormwater runoff is impacted by gas powered leaf blowers, believe it or not. So it's all those kinds of things. So the health was why. So when one resident came up and said, well, is the health not that important in the fall and in the spring? Why are we allowing them at all? And he's right. He was right. And I think between the presentation by the Environmental Advisory Committee and comments like that, we had a unanimous vote to restrict them completely in the township. I've been asked numerous times by municipalities from everywhere, all over New Jersey, have contacted me, especially during the pandemic. So I've spoken about how we did it, and a lot of times I get questions like, well, what about your DPW? How do you get them to stop using them? And I'm like, it kind of baffles me when I get that question, because I'm like, because you tell them they can't use them anymore. Like, we follow our own laws, like that's kind of important. So just, there's all these little things like the whether it's a mayor and council or a common council or a city council or a township or a borough, the whole job of those of us who are elected officials is to set policy, and that policy needs to be followed by our own employees. So that's the kind of thing. So I could ramble on forever about it, but I don't know what you want me to focus on necessarily, especially because I'm not positive of the audience, other than I know that it's probably Environmental Commission people. But those of you, I have advised other towns as to how to get this sort of done. We are starting to get pushback, and I'm very interested to see what happens in the spring when the spring rake out and the fall. We had I've had a couple of landscapers reach out to me just recently who I hadn't heard from, but I knew, and I said, where have you been for 6 years? And now you're suddenly, calling me and saying, can you change the ordinance to do this or that? And the answer is no, obviously. So we did restrict one piece of equipment for which there is not an electric alternative. And that was sort of, it's not used often. We do have a golf course in town that uses this piece of equipment, and it's attached to the back of a little small tractor or lawnmower or whatever, and it kind of blows. It's called a turbine blower, and it blows low to the ground. I believe it's a 4-stroke engine, which is also otherwise banned in our ordinance, but we did accept that piece of equipment for now until there's an electric alternative. So, and I just want to say, as far as green practices go for landscaping, the American Green Zone Alliance is a good resource for training people. It's short, AGZA is what they go by. So that's a resource that Dan Mabe is the owner of that. And what was great about it, back in 2017, in October of 2017, I worked with quietcommunities.org is their website, Quiet Communities, and the director of that, as well as AGZA. And we worked together and did a full day seminar, if you will, for landscapers, for municipal officials, for anyone interested. And that was really to tell people. We had medical experts, we had scientists, and we had a green landscaper from Western New York who came. So we had Dan from EXA like there with commercial grade green equipment to demonstrate. So we did a lot in those first couple of years, especially to educate the community, to educate the landscapers, and to kind of figure out how we can get this quality of life issue, because that's impacting so many communities across the country, under control. And eventually, like this 6 years in, it's sort of like, why do we even need to do this? I mean, the original exemption of or the restriction of them in the summer was because there's nothing to blow in the summer, right? And the landscape companies, not all of them, are landscape architects or companies that, want to do a lot of the things Michelle was talking about. A lot of them have come up and all they do is the same thing on every property every week for their monthly fee, right? So they come in and they mow, trim, and blow regardless of what needs to be done. So part of the argument in the original pilot year was that, it's a drought in the July, the grass isn't even growing. Why are we even doing this? So that sort of feeds into maybe we should be more sustainable about our practices for lawns. And we've talked about, we had no mow May here last year where we didn't enforce our, property maintenance, for example, for lawns that were too long. We wanted people to kind of not mow their lawn for a month and see what happened, and to encourage awareness of maybe rethinking what our suburbs need to look like, and maybe the postage stamp lawns that we have, many of which we have, are 50 by 150. So then we don't have big lawns. So maybe we don't need them all to be perfectly trimmed, and we don't need them all to be mowed down to the bottom, and we don't need them to be completely free of debris. So we push the leave the leaves, and we push the it's better for your yard. Don't blow everything off and then pay a landscaper to go and get a bunch of chemicals to bring back on. So that it's all kind of, there's a, and it took a while for people to be like, why are these leaf blowers going? And it's going to take a while to kind of reverse this sort of behavior, and maybe even get back to 101 parenting of make your 12-year-old go out and mow your lawn. Like not, very basic things, like kind of flip it back to kind of, pay your kid $5 a week to do it and save $150 a month on a landscaper. And no shade to any landscapers out there. It's just sort of like a mindset that kind of needs to be changed, because some of the pushback we got was, you can't tell me how to maintain my property and I don't have time. I'm not physically able, and I don't have this or that. It's like, yeah, but there are externalities involved with the way you're choosing to maintain your property. And that means, like, when I use my battery mower, when my lawn needs mowing, and I rake when I need to rake anything, I'm not really disturbing my neighbors. But a landscaping company coming in with 2 or 3 blowers in the fall and just like blowing from the back of the property to the street has a major impact on a lot of people. So, I think you just kind of being aware of this doesn't have to be the norm. And I guess I'll just leave it there, Sheila, so you can ask me what you want me to talk about, because there's all the things about enforcement and how we made it work, because that's part of the problem too.
Yeah, we have, thanks a lot, Nancy. We have a few questions and stuff, both for you and for Michelle. So if Pat asked if landscapers and homeowners are permitted to use electric blowers. I believe that's obviously is permitted. And how did you go about notifying the landscapers? Is that the homeowner has to do it, or was the town doing it?
No, we were doing it. We actually require landscape companies to register every year with the township for like $50 unless they already paid the state. So it's just so we have their information, and then every year we send them update, prior to the season. Don't forget to register, and don't forget we don't allow these during these dates.
Gotcha. Terrific. For Michelle, is somebody from the Westfield Green Team asked, is there an organic pesticide to deal with invasives such as, I think Japanese knotweed is what JNW is,
Yeah,
but
JNW is Japanese knotweed. Unfortunately, there's no great like post-emergent organic weed control. There's products that kind of come out. I'm not as familiar with the more recent ones. So Japanese knotweed is, a bear, is an absolute bear. And, that's one, actually in my other life, in my other part of my work, I do a lot with invasive species management. And that is one place where pesticides are necessary, just to get them under control, so that you can go on to your more sustainable landscaping practices. You initially may have to use something just because it's just so incredibly aggressive. And I know that there were some other questions that I wasn't sure if I should answer them or not. Hopefully,
yeah,
that's
I was
okay.
actually thinking that we might want to read, especially the one from Tammy, just so that the other people participating or people seeing this on recording. So Tammy had asked, should sustainable landscaping benefits also include the prevention of soil loss? Many landscapers do not have the in-depth knowledge required to provide these types of services. And how can you help encourage these people to go to trainings? And also, do you have trainings in other languages? So that's a big
Yeah.
question, but I think it's important. So thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. So for a landscaper, there is no greater incentive than the landscaper's client asking for the service. So it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Like they have a business and they have to maintain their business, and they want to provide services that their clients want. So the most effective thing that townships can be doing, and we all can be doing, is educating the public and educating their clientele about why these practices are so important. Also, the more they understand things like leaving the leaves and the science and the ecology of why these practices are important, and see systems in place to make, maybe less maintained habitats more acceptable, more publicly acceptable. One landscaper told me that they started getting requests from their clients in North Jersey for more native plants, more meadow type habitats when the High Line went in Manhattan. So a lot of those people work in Manhattan. They go on the High Line in Manhattan, or maybe if any of you have been to Battery Park recently, or Tribeca, or along the West Side Highway, there's a lot of native plantings that have been used there. And the Highland was a high profile project that used almost all native plants for the vegetation and used a more low maintenance, kind of wild looking approach. So things like that go a long way to getting clients public acceptance of these kind of less maintained practices.
Great, thank you. So for Nancy, or maybe, I don't know, Michelle or Sheila, you might know this. Ben from Wyckoff had sort of a two-part question. First of all, are there other municipalities in New Jersey, do we know of, that have banned leaf blowers or gas blowers or any other equipment? And what about progress on a statewide? Is there any progress on any of those?
Well, I know there's several municipalities that have banned them for summer. And South Orange, our next door neighbor here, just did that for the first time this year, partly in by pressure by residents who knew that we didn't allow them, and especially those who live on the border. you know, they're like, "Oh, we don't have leaf blowers, but South Orange is right there." Anyway, so there are several municipalities. Summit tried it, but they rolled it out in a little bit of a wonky way that wasn't well received. So I don't think they're going to revisit that for a while. But there are other municipalities, Montclair, Princeton, Spring Lake was considering. I don't know where they are with it. As far as the state bills, there's one in the Assembly, there's one in the Senate. It did get bounced out of committee recently for Senator Smith from Middlesex is sponsoring that bill to stop, basically eventually stop the sale of gas-powered leaf blowers and equipment, much in the way California has, and therefore, you know, eventually eliminate it. But I think I would encourage every environmental advisory commission to have every one of their members write emails to your representatives in the assembly and the state. I mean, I know it's kind of boring, but it only needs to be like a short paragraph to just say, you got to do something about this, because the reality is elected officials, especially on a state level, the more municipalities that ban them, just like plastic bags, we banned plastic bags in Maplewood before the state did it. And it gives them a comfort level when more municipalities do something, and it gives them, you know, a cushion with which to protect themselves. And so for all these issues, you know, have it pushed in your local level and also on the, you know, on the, that will hopefully eventually move to the state level with more force, but they got to hear from everybody.
Okay, that helps Walter, I think, who had also asked about other towns that have ordinances. So,
Yeah.
and by the way, just a reminder, anybody after this program, if you want to ask us for the list of towns that already have bans, just send an email to info@angic.org and we will find out or put you in touch with Michelle or Nancy or anything. So it doesn't mean this conversation has to end just because we're going to end in a few minutes. Dan had asked a question, does Maplewood require that lawn services suck up the leaf litter, which prevents it from clogging up the gutters, or are they still allowed to use electric blowers? I know they're allowed to use electric blowers.
Yeah,
Is there any requirement on leaf litter, like what to do?
No, we still have pickup days, and they are not permitted to leave leaves in the street when it's not the week for that area to be picked up, but that's tough to enforce. That's harder than enforcing leaf blowers. But yeah, and then after a certain date, they are required to take them away. So a lot of times you'll see toward the end of the fall cleanup, you'll see, you know, more landscaping trucks with leaves in the back because they have to remove them and take them elsewhere.
Right. Brian has said, you know, his borough council has expressed concern. I think Brian is from Metuchen, that banning leaf blowers will call landscapers to charge property owners more for their services.
Yeah, that's especially during the pilot, that was something when we interviewed the landscapers that they said they would have to do. It did not come to fruition. And now we're 6 years in, right, to at least a seasonal restriction. Doubtful that what I've been trying to tell some of the landscapers who've reached out to me recently, I think what this kind of ban will do will change what they do. They will have to sort of change their practice, and their customers will have to be informed of that and know that. I mean, if everybody thinks back before we hired landscapers to do our, you know, lawn every week, in the fall, you waited until most of the leaves on the trees on your property fell before you raked them. You didn't do it every week, you know, so that became a norm that wasn't really normal before. And that's a problem. But so the expectation to what we were talking about with allowing people to have more natural lawns, like I think the leaves are pretty on the ground for quite a while, and mowing over them takes care of most of them by putting them back into the lawn and then raking them into your landscaping beds. But Even if you want a pristine lawn, it doesn't have to be pristine all the time. If they want, and they might need to do different levels. If you want us to remove all your leaves every week, then it's going to be X amount more because we can't use gas-powered leaf blowers.
Right.
There's also practices that they were using that even the National Landscaper Association used to have on their website, but they removed it when the New Jersey Landscaper Association was suing our township for the ban. Because their own guidelines for the use of gas-powered leaf blowers were not more than one on a property, not within 10 feet of doors and windows, not using them almost ever at full throttle. And I think all of our combined experience will say that just the opposite happens, because the workers who are being harmed physically by this use, just trying to make a living for their families, are they just are told, here, go blow the leaves. So like I mentioned before, blowing them from the back of a property all the way to the front. You wouldn't do that if you were raking, or if you had maybe were using the blowers at a lower throttle, if you will. And then you put them on a tarp and pull them out to the front. So there's going to be a need for some behavior change on the companies to do what their customers want.
Terrific, thank you. I think this one's for Michelle again. Walter is asking, do you know of any community ordinances on invasive species? And I believe that Anjek actually knows of some ordinances that talk about, first of all, in new developments or development plans, they have to use native, which obviously would be non-invasive. But do you know of any that, I guess, particularly any other tips on that, Michelle?
Yeah, this is the second time I've been asked this question recently, and I guess I have to do a deeper dive into this. But what I was aware of, there is maybe one or two towns that I know have banned bamboo or have severe restrictions on bamboo, but other species don't come to mind of towns that have all out banned invasive species. But you're right, rather they've encouraged native plants. There is right now, I believe, going through the legislature an invasive do not plant bill that's in, I guess, in the Assembly and the Senate, similar to what Delaware adopted last year. Was it last year?
Yeah.
Every state around us has a some sort of invasive species legislation, some sort of like do not plant list. Just in the news this week was Pennsylvania's about to add burning bush, Euonymus alata, to that list of what can't be bought, sold, propagated in the state. That's a long answer to that.
Yeah, that's great. No, yeah. I think there's a lot of movement on that, and for good reason. First of all, as you keep telling us, how it makes your garden healthier anyway to have natives, and they do better, and you don't need to fertilize them. You don't need to, they're used to living here. So anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir. So Pat asked if we've been talking about mowing over the leaves and stuff, and I know this is a question some people struggle with. Is it problematic in terms of the insect habitat in the winter? We know that there are pollinators that hide under those leaves all winter long if we don't we leave them, right?
Right. This is making me think of my husband, who on Thanksgiving morning, our in-laws were coming over and he was tidying up the yard, and I had finally, gotten him to mulch mow the leaves. And then I was running out saying, no, don't leave the leaves. We have to, let's have it. So it was, Thanksgiving morning was not a good time to have this conversation with him. There has to be some sort of healthy balance there. Pat is right in that ideally, we do have a lot of insects that overwinter in that leaf litter. We have insects that will drop their eggs from the trees, and they even, some of them look like seeds, so when you mow that leaf up, you potentially you hurt their habitat and them also. But the reality is that there has to be a balance on every landscape. As much as folks can be raking leaves into, garden beds, that is as a good thing. And then, where they have to mulch mow, then do it, but make a plan for how it's going to be done. Try to think strategically about it and where you can minimize that negative impact.
You can also like use, most towns have that, some sort of leaf pickup, or counties. But let's put fewer leaves out there, right? Let's do the mulch mow, use what we can on our property. And then there's not the mounds that you see, on the street, messing up parking spaces and starting car fires and things like that.
Yeah. Pat had asked, I assume this is for you, Nancy, to touch on any enforcement, either.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to, because that was a key part in the success of the program in Maplewood, where other towns, I know Montclair had their ban on the books for quite a long time, but the landscapers knew that nobody would enforce it, or it's difficult for municipalities to enforce, because by the time, first of all, you're usually calling like code enforcement, which is like 2 or 3 people in the building department who are usually out enforcing other codes, right? So it's tough to get in touch with somebody. And then if you did get in touch with somebody, by the time they got there, the company would be gone, and the infraction hurt. So our municipal prosecutor, is also the head of the community development department, which includes the building department. And we originally wanted people to use the non-emergency number for the police, but we realized that wasn't kind of cool. We're a pretty progressive community here, so we didn't want, especially during the last presidential administration, when immigrants were being demonized in a lot of ways. We didn't, and there was, more fear than normal among maybe illegal immigrant community. Many of the workers can be immigrants who are not documented. So we didn't want a cop car rolling up on any workers and making people nervous. So we eliminated that as a way to report the illegal use of the gas-powered leaf blowers. But what we do encourage is residents to take a photo or a video of the use in progress, because everybody's got the phone and it's, time and date stamped. Take a picture of the license plate or the name of the company on the truck, and submit both those things along with the date and time and the address where it was happening. And our code enforcement department then immediately sends a summons, and that evidence has held up in court. So it's not, and that's sort of why it was able. So we don't hold the residents, well, at least if a resident is using a gas-powered leaf blower, which is no longer permitted either in our town, people can turn in their neighbors, but are uncomfortable doing that, so, but if a commercial landscape, it's really the company using it or whoever that they would be sort of turning in, it's not the neighbor who hired that company.
Right.
Just to try to keep, some peace.
Yeah, I get it.
But it's been really effective.
And everybody's learning. So the good thing is, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of campaign, a lot of stuff out there about this now. So I think we got time for one last sort of comment question.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add one little thing to the enforcement part real quick. Part of it was the fines, and this week came from the landscapers. When we had the pilot, we had $100 fine for if you were using it, and during the restricted time. Some of the landscapers were upset about that because other landscapers were either the person who hired them was saying, if you get caught, I'll pay the $100, or they just were risking it because it wasn't that big of a fine. So at the encouragement of landscapers who were following the law, we increase the fine. So our fines are pretty steep. If you get caught using them, it's a $500 fine for the first offense, $1,000 for the second, and $1,500 for the third. So it makes people comply because it's not just a, slap on the wrist. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just.
No, that's fine. I just, in the meantime, while you were talking, Eve shared that the Princeton ordinance actually penalizes the landscape company, if there is one, and the property owner.
Yeah,
Both
a lot to.
could get fined. So anyway, Stan had asked a question about that his town in Franklin is going to plan to do a no mow April. And what do you think about a campaign that's based on lack of action versus habitat protection? So this is habitat protection as a reason to do such a thing, which could be a good selling, right? What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah. Stan and I have gone back and forth over email a little bit about no more May and no more April. I think anything that can help educate the public about the science and the ecology and how these practices help protect the environment is a good thing. So that's my feeling on that.
Any way you can skin the cat is never going to be a bad thing. Any new
Yeah.
idea? Yeah.
I think I originally started out with a different philosophy on this, but Stan convinced me. I will
Okay.
say that I think it is also good to encourage people to where possible reduce lawn and convert it to habitat. So
Yeah, like a partial lawn, no mow May instead of your whole lawn.
But I think that's what
Yeah.
Stan was saying in our email was that, well, hopefully this will convince people to go in that direction, that
Yeah.
maybe they
Right.
don't eat as much as lawn.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we will, it's 8:15, so I think it's time for everybody to take a breath and enjoy the rest of their evening. I want to again thank Michelle Backus and Nancy Adams so much for the wonderful presentation. A lot of good talking, a lot of good ideas to be shared around. We will share the recording. We will share the chat, which had a whole bunch of links in it as the Q&A. So we will share all that with you. It'll be on ANJAC's website as well as on our YouTube channel. So we will be in touch soon, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, Sheila.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.